go ahead and take your nap after you eat dinner game, because if the starting quarterbacks had been available, maybe it would have had a little more sizzle. It looks good on TV, but the Giants were 2-9 coming into the game. The Cowboys, they beat the Commanders, but they feel like they're done. Cooper Rush is playing instead of Dak Prescott. At the end of the day, the Cowboys get the win, 27-20. They didn't embarrass the Giants. And you got Micah Parsons saying we could go on a run now. Have you seen enough from the Cowboys in their last 2 games, both wins, to make you think they can go on a run?
Listen, see, that's what I'm talking about with Micah Parsons. Why just take it one game at a time that we can make a run? You beat the Giants. You beat a weak Washington Commanders team. Like, why are you even talking about that? Hey, we're going to look at the film. We're going to continue to study what we need to improve on. We're going to continue to work day by day. Forget about giving the media that. See, that's what I'm talking about. And that comes from the head coach. The head coach has to set the tone in the team meeting rooms. And he should tell the players, look, if they ask us, don't talk about no Super Bowl, don't talk about playoffs, talk about the way we're grinding one game at a time, one day at a time to become a better offense, to become a better defense, to become better individual players. That's the message that needs to be talked about. And that's why I say Micah Parsons is not the leader that you want if you're the Dallas Cowboys. And that's why I always talk about I would trade him. I would get rid of him, because not only do you have to pay him $40 million a year, but now you got to deal with the way he responds to media, him dealing with a podcast. Mike, do you understand the type of cussing out I would have gotten from my teammates if I would have been doing a podcast during the week? Because it takes time away from you, because you have to prepare for other teams and what they got going on. And it takes time away from what you're doing, and your focus and your concentration should be on your team. And you mean to tell me that you actually got time within a season to watch all the tape that you have to watch and still prepare for a podcast? Come on, Mike. And, and we see Micah Parsons. One last point. We see this defense is different with him in the game. He comes in, he provides a spark. But to me, it's still not enough. I would trade Micah Parsons. He wouldn't be part of my team moving forward.
One of his teammates, Malik Hooker, questioned his podcast habit, and Parsons got defensive. Hey, it's my day off. We don't work all the time. We have the capacity to do other things. And I understand that, but the problem is the podcast can create distractions, storylines, follow up. It's no different than Aaron Rodgers doing 40 minutes every Tuesday with Pat McAfee and AJ Hawk. It creates storylines that need to be cleaned up, can create distractions for the team. You just need to tread lightly with that. But Parsons, I think, is good enough to get away with it. I think if they want to trade him, they'll get a nice haul in return. They may have to from a cap standpoint. After you pay Dak Prescott and pay CeeDee Lamb, unless you want to have 3 highly paid guys and a bunch of mid-round draft picks, and that's your roster, you're not going to have a competitive football team. They could get back multiple first-round picks that they could use to reload the roster. It's just a heck of a risk giving up one of the best players in football. I mean, you agree that you set aside all the other stuff. Between the lines, he is a difference maker for the Cowboys.
He's a difference maker, but I watch him in the run game too. You watch him go around blocks. You watch him trying to avoid a block, trying to come around and make tackles. No, sometimes you got to go up in there. You got to hit that pulling guard in his mouth, and you got to create a pile. I don't see the physicality. Yeah, I see a guy that can get after the quarterback, absolutely. But what does the Cowboys need? They need somebody that can stop the run, and he has to be held more accountable for his lack of play in the run game. That's all I'm saying. I'm not paying a guy $40 million a year, because that's what he's going to want. He's going to want a 4 or 5 year deal for anywhere from 160 to 200 million. And for a guy that doesn't actively play a run game like that, there's no way I'm making that type of investment. And once again, I don't want 3 guys at the top. I don't want to be so rich up here that I'm poor down here. I want more of a balance. And that's why I always speak about Micah Parsons.
Speaking of the run game, the Cowboys finally got a great performance from Rico Dowdle, who is the guy. They were doing committee for a while. Dowdle, Ezekiel Elliott, Dalvin Cook was part of the mix. Now it's Dowdle, 22 carries, 112 yards, and a touchdown. That's good if they can do it against better teams. The Giants kind of defeated and deflated. Dexter Lawrence exited with an elbow injury. This isn't a great defense that they were going up against.
It doesn't matter, though, Mike. It doesn't matter if it's a great defense or not. The thing that matters is the last 2 weeks, Rico Dowdle, he's played some of his best football, and they're committing to running the football. And that's how you change the narrative. You got to play good defense, and you got to be able to run the football. And it almost forces you to run the football when you have a backup quarterback. You don't have the luxury of saying, okay, we're just going to rely on Dak passing the ball 40 times. We're going to actually run the football. And I got to give Mike McCarthy a lot of credit. I mean, he had these guys ready to play despite all the distractions and all the injuries and everything that's going on. It was good to see Deron Bland back and Overshown making a huge play.
That was a great play.
I think he's done a good job, man. Mike McCarthy's done a good job in a tough situation.
Well, and think about that. The front office dragged their feet with CeeDee Lamb's contract and Dak Prescott's contract, which prevented the Cowboys from going all in with free agents aimed at making the team better than it was last year. Yep. Mike McCarthy's lame duck, no contract, harder to command the locker room, get the respect, get the attention. At some point, it becomes a given the guy's not going to come back. Why are we listening to this guy? We're going to have a new coach next year. And that's why I thought it was interesting this week that Jerry Jones pushed back on the idea that McCarthy won't get an extension. Now, I think part of it is the showmanship of Jerry Jones to make his team interesting, but he could coach his way to another contract. He could coach his way to keeping that job. And the guys are responding. You have guys there that are playing hard in what otherwise felt like a lost season, and McCarthy gets the credit for getting them to do it.
Right, and that's what I'm looking at. I can tell you if a team respects their head coach by the way they go out and play. And those guys are still fighting for Mike McCarthy. It's not like they're going out on that football field saying, I don't like my head coach. I'm just going to show up. No, they're out there fighting and clawing and competing and doing everything they can. So to me, it just shows that they have a lot of respect for Mike McCarthy, and the guy's done a really good job. Like what coach would want the head coaching job of the Dallas Cowboys? If you're Ben Johnson, you want to go there with Jerry Jones over your shoulder? You want to deal with that misery? No, you don't want to deal with that misery. Or maybe he does want to deal with that misery, but I wouldn't want to deal with that. Somebody looking over my shoulder, and for me not to feel like I have the freedom to make decisions without somebody looking over my shoulder. So that's something to look at.
And beyond that, you got an owner who does 2 radio interviews every week. And after most games, he's standing there with a bunch of microphones in his face, answering questions from the media. He's the face of the franchise. You have to be willing to surrender to this guy who's going to say God knows what and create storylines that you're going to have to deal with, fires you're going to have to put out. It just makes your job harder. And again, my take on Jerry Jones, and I finally realized that this year, this whole act of, oh, I really want to win the Super Bowl, and he wants his team to be interesting and relevant and on TV, and he wants to make a lot of money. And the rest of it, I think, is all aimed at that goal. He wants to be America's team. He wants to be the team everybody talks about and thinks about and wants to watch play, and winning is an afterthought for him.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because you got so many guys in that locker room that, they take for granted being a Dallas Cowboy. And it's got to be more about than just, popularity. It's got to be about winning football games. And when you don't have that priority from your ownership, and I knew that Kraft was all about winning when I was with the Patriots. I knew that he had given Bill the power, and we trusted Bill to make the right decisions. And when Bill would say, hey, negotiating deals and say, hey, we can't pay you this because, we might have to pay someone else, then you're willing to take a little bit less, because you trust the head coach and you trust the ownership and you trust the direction of the organization. If you don't trust the organization, which I don't think a lot of players actually trust Jerry Jones, and like you talked about, the trust should have came from the new contract with CeeDee Lamb, with Dak Prescott. If you're an organization that's tied together, that's organized, these are things are already pretty much mapped out. You already know that, hey, we're going to pay Dak anywhere from 55 to 60 million. We're going to pay CeeDee Lamb this. This is what we're going to offer. If these guys don't want this deal, we got to be ready to.
Howdy, Cowboys Nation. Welcome to Dallas Cowboys Today, your number one source for all things America's team. If you're a diehard football fan and love our Dallas Cowboys, you're in the right place. So don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to stay updated with all the latest Cowboys news. Let's get started. What's up, Cowboys fans? Have you started thinking about how our team can improve for next season? Today, we're diving into a potential roster rebuild for the Dallas Cowboys and discussing how big names like Chase Young could fit into the picture. Is it time for Jerry Jones to take a bold new direction to get this team back on top? Before we jump into it, I want to hear from you. Do you think this roster has what it takes for the future, or is it time for a complete overhaul? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This conversation is for the true die-hard fans like you. Now, let's get straight to it. While this season isn't over yet, it's hard not to look ahead. Injuries to key players like DeMarcus Lawrence and even Micah Parsons have exposed the need for serious defensive reinforcements. Enter Chase Young, currently with the Saints, as a potential game changer. Young, the 2020 Defensive Rookie of the Year, is still working his way back from injuries. Even so, his talent is undeniable, and he's already worked with Cowboys defensive line coach Jeff Zgonina during their time with the Commanders. That connection could be key if Dallas decides to make aggressive moves this offseason. But here's the big question. Is Chase Young the boost our defense needs? The Cowboys' defense has always been a cornerstone of the team's success, but if major roster changes are on the horizon, investing in a player like Young could be a risk or a golden opportunity. On the other hand, should the focus shift elsewhere, like the draft or other free agents? And it doesn't stop with the defense. This rebuild might also extend to key positions on offense, but that's a topic for another video. For now, the big question remains, will Jerry Jones finally step away from a conservative strategy and bring in impactful players to make the Dallas Cowboys unstoppable once again? So, Cowboys Nation, what would you do if you were in his shoes? Let me know in the comments, share your thoughts with the community, and don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends on social media, and subscribe to the channel. Together, we'll keep dreaming and cheering for the team we love. Until next time, and as always, go Cowboys!